One of Russia's most significant advantages in the conflict in Ukraine has been its ability to sustain strikes against Ukrainian rear areas using missiles and drones launched from occupied territories. This edge has not yet been neutralized. However, with U.S. assistance, Ukraine is approaching a more balanced position. A new American weapon is set to alter the dynamics of the war in Ukraine, turning Russian rear zones into uncontested kill areas. Russia appears largely powerless against what is coming. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.
On February 2, the War Zone, TWZ, reported that the latest development phase of a critical weapon had been completed. The Rusty Dagger missile has flown. Moreover, it has finished a testing stage, bringing this low-cost cruise missile closer to deployment in Ukraine. According to TWZ, the U.S. Air Force disclosed details of a live-fire test of the missile, part of the Extended Range Attack Munition (ERAM) group, developed under a program that will deliver thousands of such missiles to Ukraine. We will return to this point shortly.
First, it must be emphasized that the U.S. Air Force's test was a resounding success. However, some debate persists regarding the test date. The Air Force itself announced on January 30 that a successful live-fire test occurred at the Eglin Test and Training Range on January 21, 2025, less than 16 months after the initial development contract was signed. TWZ also reported this date, but Defense Express suggested the date might be a typo. They argued the actual live-fire test likely occurred later, explaining, in reality, development of new cruise missiles under the ARAM program for Ukraine did not begin in 2023. The request for proposals before contractor selection and contract signing was initiated on January 31, 2024, followed by an order in October, which accounts for the 16-month timeline.
Determining the accurate date is crucial. If the U.S. Air Force's provided date remains correct and unchanged as of this writing, the Rusty Dagger could reach Ukraine soon. A live fire test conducted over a year ago implies any necessary refinements for the Rusty Dagger have been completed or are progressing well. But if Defense Express is correct about the typo, Ukraine might face a longer wait, assuming the test did not yet prove the Rusty Dagger fully ready. Setting aside the date controversy, the main headline remains clear. The Rusty Dagger has been successfully tested.
Brigadier General Robert Lyons III, who oversees U.S. weapons acquisition, quickly praised the achievement. He stated, "Moving from contract award to live-fire test in under 2 years demonstrates we can deliver lethal, affordable capability at the speed of relevance." He added, "This is how we rebuild the force, by empowering our teams and industry partners to cut through bureaucracy and deliver the tools our warfighters need to win." Indeed, the Rusty Dagger has undergone a remarkably rapid development cycle, regardless of which of the two dates is accurate. Although the U.S. Air Force did not name the cruise missile in its press release, both TWZ and Defense Express confirmed that the released test photos clearly depict this weapon. The images show the Rusty Dagger diving directly onto a fixed target with the live warhead detonating. The specific air platform used to launch the missile remains unidentified. However, if these ERAM missiles are delivered to Ukraine, it suggests that F-16 aircraft may have participated in the test or will be compatible with the Rusty Dagger once it is ready for fielding.
We have mentioned the ARAM program several times. As previously noted, the Rusty Dagger missile is part of the ARAM initiative, which is expected to supply thousands of cruise missiles to Ukraine with American support. Janes reported on the ARAM agreement in September, noting that the deal was signed on August 28 and will result in the U.S. providing 3,350 integrated global positioning inertial navigation system modules to Ukraine. Defense Express added that the program aims to deliver low-cost missiles to Ukraine. The 3,350 ARAM missiles will reach the country at a total cost of only $825 million, funded by Ukraine's European partners. That works out to roughly $246,000 per missile, opening the possibility that Ukraine could purchase additional quantities independently in the future.
Consider Ukraine as a live-fire proving ground. The Rusty Dagger has excelled in its initial evaluations. If Ukraine later demonstrates that the missile can inflict serious damage on Russian targets, the country will likely seek more. Ukraine will also prove the missile's combat viability, thereby increasing demand and ensuring that the Rusty Dagger manufacturer, Zone 5 Technologies, receives sufficient orders to ramp up production. These are future considerations, but as we will explore shortly, what is already known about the Rusty Dagger indicates it will be a weapon that every Western nation will desire. Before diving deeper, it should be noted that the Rusty Dagger is not the only missile being developed under the ERAM project. According to a February 3rd report by United 24 Media on the missile's successful test, a company called Aspire is developing a cruise missile with a similar concept, though it is unclear whether that missile has undergone live fire testing. Aspire states that its missile, designated the Rapidly Adaptable Affordable Cruise Missile, RAACM, has completed long-range flights, as highlighted in a video posted on the company's YouTube channel. Beyond that, little additional information about the RAACM has surfaced. For now, Ukraine is unlikely to be overly concerned about this.
The live fire test of the Rusty Dagger means that at least one ERAM missile has reached a major milestone, and that signifies the Rusty Dagger has taken a significant step toward becoming part of Ukraine's growing arsenal for striking Russian rear areas. Among those weapons is the Ruta Block 2, a cruise missile developed by Destinus. According to United 24 Media, this cruise missile is an upgraded version of the earlier Ruta missile, which the Ukrainian Defense Forces first deployed in December 2024. Details on its employment and the timeline for Ukraine receiving the Ruta Block 2 remain limited. But the key point is that Ukraine is filling its cruise missile capability gap with weapons like these, and as we will soon see, closing that gap is critically important for Ukraine.
Returning to the Rusty Dagger, what is known about the missile indicates it will be a major asset for Ukraine. According to Defense Express, the missile is reported to offer high accuracy and can carry a warhead weighing approximately 500 pounds. In terms of destructive power, that makes it comparable to many guided bombs Russia has used to strike Ukrainian cities over the past several years. In addition to the 500-pound warhead, the Rusty Dagger is said to have a range of up to 250 miles, slightly exceeding the ATACMS missiles Ukraine has received from the United States, which have also been employed against targets in Russia's rear areas. The Rusty Dagger is further reported to reach a maximum speed of Mach 0.6 and achieve accuracy within 33 feet of the target. TWZ adds that the missile carries either a unitary or fragmentation warhead and is believed to possess a degree of penetration capability, potentially making it a strong choice against hardened targets. Additionally, a video released in June 2025 shows footage of the Rusty Dagger in flight. The video was recorded before the live fire test, assuming the Air Force date is correct, but it provides useful insight into the new missile. Notably, Zone 5 Technologies designed the Rusty Dagger for launch from multiple platforms, and the missile's engine ignites without any pyrotechnic cartridges, likely reducing its initial thermal signature and making it harder for adversaries to detect and counter. The missile also features autonomous navigation and terrain-following flight while using terrain for positioning. Once again, this is ideal for evading Russian air defense systems, as the lower the missile flies, the less opportunity those systems have to detect and engage it in time. Incidentally, the RACM, developed by Aspire, appears to have similar technical specifications. It is a 3D printed missile with physical dimensions comparable to the GBU-38 or Mk-82 bombs, each weighing about 500 pounds. The RACM can also be integrated onto any aircraft capable of carrying the GBU-38, indicating it was designed for compatibility with Ukraine's Soviet-era airframes. What we have here is the result of the ERAM program in action. The program, especially the Rusty Dagger, will bring profound changes to Ukraine. It alone will alter everything.
Earlier, we noted that the Rusty Dagger, along with other incoming cruise missiles for Ukraine, will significantly enhance Ukraine's strike capabilities. This means Ukraine will be able to hit Russian targets currently beyond the reach of most weapons in its inventory. TWZ reports that even Western-supplied precision-guided bombs cannot strike as deeply as the Rusty Dagger, yet the new American cruise missile can deliver effects comparable to the glide bombs Russia has employed. It would be inaccurate to claim Ukraine has had no options for striking Russian rear areas, particularly in occupied Ukrainian territory. Many of Ukraine's long-range drones are fully capable of such missions in terms of range, though Ukraine will want to preserve as many of those drones as possible for strikes into Russian territory. Ukraine has also developed medium-range attack drones that, as the name suggests, can hit intermediate distances beyond the reach of FPV drones and too valuable to expend with long-range drones. The Stepovoi Vitter is a prime example. United 24 Media reported its unveiling in February, noting a 43-mile operational range and 11-pound warhead capacity. It is undoubtedly a useful weapon. However, those specifications illustrate why Ukraine needs cruise missiles like the Rusty Dagger. The American ERAM missile can fly more than 4 times farther and strike with roughly 100 times the destructive power of the Stepovoi Vitter, making it the superior choice for many targets Ukraine seeks to eliminate. Those targets are numerous.
As TWZ points out, the combination of range and payload makes the Rusty Dagger well-suited for destroying Russian logistics hubs, air defense systems, and command and control facilities. If rumors about its penetration capability are accurate, the Rusty Dagger would also be ideal for targeting airfields. Russia would likely struggle to prevent it from breaching aircraft shelters housing airframes. If Ukraine is permitted to employ the missile inside Russian territory, it could effectively constrain Russia's military-industrial capacity through devastating strikes on oil refineries and production facilities that Ukraine's long-range drones might not be able to reach.
However, the word "permitted" hints at a potential issue. Whether Ukraine will be allowed to use the Rusty Dagger inside Russian territory remains a contentious subject. Earlier, we mentioned that this new cruise missile has a longer range than the ATACMS missiles previously supplied by the United States. Those missiles were at the center of controversy in 2025, when the Wall Street Journal revealed that the Pentagon had quietly restricted Ukraine from using them against any targets outside Ukrainian territory for much of that year. In August, the newspaper reported that the United States had established a new approval process sometime in late spring, giving Washington veto power over ATACMS missiles' employment.
2 anonymous officials told the paper they were aware of at least one instance in which Ukraine sought to strike a target inside Russia with ATACMS, but the request was denied under the new review mechanism. Reportedly, that mechanism also grants the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, final authority on whether Ukraine may employ ATACMS for a desired purpose. There is one documented case in which a Ukrainian request cleared the review mechanism. In November, NBC reported that Ukraine conducted strikes on military targets inside Russia, described as a significant development following the Wall Street Journal's revelations. The attack marked the first time Ukraine publicly acknowledged using ATACMS inside Russia since permission was granted in November 2024. Thus, we know that a request can pass the U.S. review mechanism,
assuming the mechanism still exists. Nevertheless, the key point here is that the Rusty Dagger, along with the RACM, may face similar restrictions. If so, Ukraine would confront the difficult prospect of needing approval each time it wishes to employ missiles clearly designed to strike Russia for their intended purpose. Whether Ukraine receives that approval will depend heavily on the political winds at the moment requests are made. That said, restrictions on aid appear to apply to Ukrainian strikes against Russian targets on occupied Ukrainian soil. Assuming the same applies to the Rusty Dagger and RACM, Ukraine will at minimum gain a weapon it can use to inflict serious damage on Russian rear areas within Ukrainian territory. And remember, every destroyed command post or logistics node severely degrades Russia's ongoing offensive pressure against Ukrainian defensive lines, meaning air-ram missiles could exert a massive impact across the entire front.
New Geopolitics offered an interesting perspective. They argue that the arrival of E-ram missiles in Ukraine represents a fusion of American and Ukrainian capabilities. The Rusty Dagger will join an expanding long-range arsenal that includes Ukraine-developed Flamingo and Neptune missiles, enabling Ukraine to conduct large-scale cruise missile and possibly ballistic missile strikes in the same manner Russia has long employed against Ukraine. The outlet stated, Ukraine's ability to independently conduct large-scale missile strikes will prove that President Zelensky holds the trump cards Trump has always feared. And they have a point.
Like the Rusty Dagger arrives in Ukraine in sufficient initial quantities to support major strikes, potentially combined with drones and other missiles, Putin will have cause for concern, not only about the damage those attacks will undoubtedly inflict, but also about Ukraine moving closer to parity in one of the few areas where Russia has held an advantage during the invasion. What that would mean for Putin as he attempts to build leverage for his maximalist peace demands remains to be seen. We also cannot overlook the low cost of this missile.
Although Ukraine has fought courageously against Russia for 4 years, there is no denying that the war effort has imposed a heavy financial burden on the country. Ukraine currently faces public debt exceeding $213 billion, with a debt-to-GDP ratio hovering around 100%. Borrowing mechanisms are keeping the country afloat, but it remains in an unhealthy financial position. Any weapon that can be mass-produced at low cost while still inflicting severe damage on Russian forces will be highly sought after. The Rusty Dagger appears to meet that criterion. If the missile lives up to expectations, together with the performance shown in its live fire test, Ukraine could possess a game-changer from both economic and military standpoints.
There is one final aspect of the Rusty Dagger that could prove highly significant for Ukraine. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency highlighted this in August when the sale of E-ram missiles to Ukraine was first announced. The agency stated, E-ram is an example of partnering with our NATO allies to develop a capable, scalable system delivered on an accelerated timeline. Indeed, this is an American-developed missile, with thousands per tour using funding from European NATO members, and designed to address a specific problem Ukraine faces. It represents a level of cooperation that Putin, with all his scheming, never anticipated. The Rusty Dagger, together with the RACM, is proof of what can be achieved when Ukraine and NATO collaborate to create a weapon tailored to harm Russia.
Ukraine will hope that the recent live-fire tests of the Rusty Dagger signal that the first batch will arrive soon, ideally sometime in 2026. Frankly, from Ukraine's perspective, the sooner the better. Once equipped with the Rusty Dagger, Ukraine will use it relentlessly to strike directly at the dark heart of Putin's war machine.
Speaking of NATO allies supporting Ukraine, the United States is not the only nation poised to supply Ukraine with game-changing missiles. Sweden may also join the effort, and one word in particular will make Putin shudder. That word is meteor, and you can learn why Putin fears it, along with everything else Sweden plans to do, in yesterday's video. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.